podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket.
Happy Easter, everyone, and welcome to this last episode of Season 3, which is so crazy to say. We're so grateful for those who have joined us right from the beginning of Season 1 and for everybody who's joined us along the way. And in this episode, we're talking a little bit about our highs and lows of this year, some of our favorite episodes, and then some of the things that we found about accepting our own sufferings. We hope that it's helpful for you, and we can't wait to see you again in the fall. Have a great summer, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome back to In the Thicket. My name is Rachel D'Souza, and I'm here with...
I'm Erin Kinsella.
I'm Nicole Richard Williams.
And we're so happy to be with you guys. This is actually, if you stumble upon this, is our last episode of the season. So
That music was a little bit more cheery than I was anticipating.
Yeah.
Like it should be, it's very sad. It's our last episode of the season, but also joyful because it's been such a fun season.
It has been. We should share, Erin, with our dear listeners, why your voice sounds extra awesome today.
Right. Yes. I had a great sinus infection, super fun one. And then did a day on like a Women's Day of Reflection, and progressively through the day, my voice went from like kind of a little bit scratchy to basically.
You were speaking, right? You were leading the reflections?
I was. Yeah. So then I basically lost it almost totally for 3/4 of a week, and then it started coming back a little bit. So it's still raspy sexy.
It is.
That's
it's smelly cat sexy, from Friends.
Yes,
that's
totally.
A Friends reference.
Smelly cat.
Yeah.
Smelly cat. Yes, totally. Love it.
That's right. So Erin's gonna definitely be here with us, but also, take care of her voice because that's important. But how are you guys? I mean, we know, Erin, you're on the mend, so praise God for that. But how are you doing, Nicole?
Good. As you're asking that, I was like having a big yawn. So I'm good. I'm at about a month away from the end of the semester. And so, my students are tired and I'm a little bit tired, and we're recording this the weekend before Holy Week, so like the Saturday just before Palm Sunday. So this past week I live in Nashville, and if you were listening to the news, we had a school shooting in Nashville, so that was right in the neighborhood where I live and where I work, and so definitely that's been like weighing on everyone this week here. So it kind of reached Wednesday, and everyone, my students and myself, were all kind of like, it feels like it should be a Friday. Like it feels like we're emotionally exhausted, from 2 days, what we normally are in a week kind of thing. So it was, so like tired, but also, just juxtaposed with the weather is getting really beautiful here. It's been really warm and sunny, and I had some visitors this week from back home, and it was just so nice to have people here. So it's just a mixed bag,
Yeah, totally.
But it's okay. It's good.
Yeah. How about you, Rach?
I'm doing pretty good. I was home in Canada for like this past weekend. I've been driving a lot back and forth for different kinds of things, and that's been really good and also really interesting to sort of be in a place of flux for like just feeling like constantly am in flux. But it's been lovely because I've gotten to see friends a lot more often at home than I anticipated being able to this semester, which is always nice, and family for sure, of course. So I'm kind of settling in a little bit before I come home again for Easter next week, which is technically next week for us, but the recording, this will be out obviously second, like you said, after Easter. So I'm good. But thinking sort of in the future, which is also in the present of the podcast as it comes out, talk about Easter for a second. And let's not talk about the important things like why Easter is amazing. Let's just kick straight to the candy. What is, Jesus rose from the dead. That's fantastic. Good news. But I want to know what your favorite candy, your favorite Easter candy is.
Yeah.
So you guys, what is it? What is your favorite Easter candy?
I mean, honestly, I'm just going with straight up mini eggs.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of cream eggs, and I'm not a fan of Peeps. I feel like both of those are just terrible.
They're abominations.
They're abominations and should be scourged, should be stricken from the face of the earth.
All right.
Very strong opinions
strong
on Easter
opinions.
candy.
Yeah, that's right.
You just have strong opinions on food in general, though.
Yeah,
Erin.
100%. That's totally
That's
true. Yeah.
And toilet paper, as we
And toilet
recall
paper. That's correct.
earlier from-
Mhm.
Yes, it should hang with the end outside of the roll. So
Right.
that's Anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
What about you guys? What's your favorite?
Nicole,
Mm.
what's yours? I'm curious.
Well, it's a candy from when I was a kid, and I'm sure they're still around, but it was they're like little bunnies, sort of small rectangular kind of things,
Oh,
and they were
yeah.
like marshmallow. But it was the
Yeah.
texture that I liked because it wasn't super chewy marshmallow. It was sort of like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like it would get a little bit like hardened on the outside, but then you
Like it
put
had
it
a
in your mouth and
crust.
kind of a crust, but then it would melt in your mouth.
Mm.
And I loved the texture. I could eat so many of those things.
that sounds
And there was like a strawberry version of those, and it was like little strawberries, but they were like a little bit more
Oh, I know what you
soft.
mean. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, those are so good. So I've never, and they're hard to find. These are like the candy of my childhood in the 90s in Winnipeg or something.
Right.
But I'm
Yeah,
sure they're
super
somewhere.
specific.
Mhm.
I haven't been able to
Yeah,
find
I
them,
would
but
love
anyway.
if somebody listening like knows what Nicole's talking about and
Yeah.
has access to those candies, if you could like tag us or something in an Instagram
Yeah.
post, that would be really exciting.
Because I feel like my mom only ever bought them like at Bulk Barn or like in bulk. So I
Right.
don't know what they're called, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think mine is probably mini eggs also. I do like Peeps. I'm sorry. I know they're weird. Peeps
Rachel.
they are trash. Like
They're like
truly are trash.
cilantro. It's either
my
you
gosh, I
love
love
them or you hate. I
Erin.
hate
I love
cilantro.
but that's because you might have that taste bud, right?
Yeah,
You'd be like,
right. I
okay,
think
yeah.
there's
Yeah,
a
it's
Peeps
genetic.
gene. There's a
Maybe
Peeps
there is.
gene
Maybe there is.
that either it tastes like soapy
Um,
garbage or
So
it tastes
can
like
I
heaven.
just totally tangent us? So I lived
Yes.
I have to tell a story about you, Erin, okay? About you and food. So when I lived at the Newman Center as a student campus minister several years ago during my first year of my PhD or my master's, anyways, I lived
Yeah.
there. And we had like training at the beginning of the year. And one of the things Erin instituted as like a rule was like no food shaming. And so like if someone orders
Oh.
something or eats something that you don't like, don't berate them for it. Just
Wow.
like accept that everyone has different foods. And I think the only person to break the rule all year was
That's
Erin.
totally me.
Consistently at almost every meal.
Yeah,
you
I'm
know?
pretty sure that was actually because the only reason I instituted a rule was
for
because
you.
somebody else said no food shaming. I was like, yes, that's good. No food shaming. And then I was like proceeded to violate it at every turn.
That's hilarious. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
because they're
Anyway.
just right and wrong ways around food, you know? That's
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So there's another
back off
Easter
from
dessert
that.
though I want to talk about.
Oh, okay.
And it involves some of your favorites. It involves mini eggs and it involves Peeps. Okay.
Oh.
And it involves shredded wheat cereal. So what you do is you take shredded wheat. So if you're listening to this and you want a fun Easter recipe
Wait.
activity to do with kids,
Tea game.
Yes,
Is like
Rachel?
are Peeps Canadian? Like, do Americans know what Peeps are? Is that like a
marshmallow Peeps? Oh, I'm sure they're.
thing? That's a thing.
I feel
right?
like all
marshmallow
candy comes from the
birds.
United States.
Yeah, probably.
Except for
I'm sure.
Smarties. Smarties is Canadian.
That's
Smarties in the
true.
States
Is M&Ms.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very confusing. There are some candy confusions when it comes to cross-border.
That's true.
Right.
Okay, but yes.
But
okay,
but so shredded wheat cereal. I'm assuming they have here too, right?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like you buy the big ones, the ones that are like
Oh yeah,
pillow
the big
size,
log
like
ones. Yeah.
2 by 4 inches or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you crush them up, okay, and then you go and you have to also buy like white chocolate melting wafers.
Okay.
Okay, and so you melt those, and then you mix the melted white chocolate with the shredded wheat, and then you have a muffin tin.
Okay.
And then you put a little bit of that chocolate shredded wheat in each muffin tin, and you shape it into little nests.
Right.
Okay? And before the chocolate dries, you put in like 4 little
mini
Cadbury
eggs.
mini eggs, and so it makes all these color like nests.
That's fun.
Okay, and then you put a little peep on top of the nest, and it's like a little Easter dessert decoration thing.
That's cute.
Really cute.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make that
it.
for my nephews.
Yeah, that's what.
And then you're gonna shame them for eating it because
That's
they're
right. That's
pizza.
correct.
She has a plan.
Yeah, that's right. I don't
So
know.
good.
Before we move on to actually important things, I guess, but this is important, I think. There's the candy conversation is important. And there are now, I don't know if you guys have seen them, like mini eggs. Like, so have you seen these? It's sort of like pebbles.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like mini eggs, Cadbury mini eggs, but like in like just I don't even know what to think of.
They sound
mini
so
eggs,
cute and delicious.
Mm-hmm. Like if you really like the crunchy coating of the mini eggs, it's like the gold mine.
That's what that
Yeah.
is.
Mhm.
Because for me, I'm like I like the crunchy coating, but I like it because it sort of offsets the chocolate. But I love the chocolate. Like I want the chocolate, you know.
Yeah.
So that's exactly because I was like, what is the point of this? It's like
I like the crunchy coating. So I'm like,
there you
you
go.
know, and
Mini
I just want a
ones.
little bit of the chocolate with the crunchy. So the mini ones are like
go.
perfect for
It's
me.
It's the minis. So
Yeah,
yeah, check them
yeah.
out. There's like I think it's like a new product or something this year, or I
Ooh.
haven't been around and I've never seen it.
Okay.
Before,
And they call them what? Mini eggs?
I don't. Yeah, I'm calling them that. I don't know what they really are called, but they're like super mini eggs.
Okay.
By the way, we are not sponsored by
That's right, Cadbury.
any of these. If they would like to sponsor us, we will accept.
I'm
for
so
this
here for that.
episode.
So great.
so
Just
here for
joking.
that.
I have no idea how that works. Anyway.
I mean, I would love that because I feel like part of how that would work is that we would get some kind of
Free
chocolate,
things.
right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean that could be detrimental to our overall health and things like that.
Mhm.
But
Sure. That's a good
Okay,
point.
that actually, this is the last Easter story I will share, but definitely one year I was like strict no sugar. So my mom got me a bunch of sugar-free stuff for Easter. I did not realize that they have an effect on your bowels. If you eat stuff with like lots of xylitol in it or those kind of things. So I like chomped on the Easter candy, the sugar-free, and then was like, oh no. And then I had severe issues.
Okay.
Because it's like the bags, they're like bags of whatever, I don't know, sugar-free chips or something. And it could, there's an actual warning on the bags that says may cause anal leakage.
Oh my gosh. I can't
Erin,
believe you said those words on our podcast.
Listen, it's an actual
I cannot believe I just heard those words come out of your mouth. And I can't believe that phrase exists in the world. And now I know it and it's in my brain.
Yeah, that's right.
I really don't like it.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So now you gotta examine your bags of chips for it, just in case.
Okay.
You know.
I'm trying so hard to forget that.
But wait, sugar-free chips? I thought chips were all
yeah. So no, they actually put a lot of, so I think it's like sugar-free / like carb wise chips, and they put some like replacement things in there that do some weird things to your digestive system. And they had to put it on because people were eating. Oh, it might have also been gummy worms. Like I think it might have been gummy things that's actually a common thing on, because you could eat like a million gummy bears, right? Like those things are just made to like keep eating because they're you know. Anyway, so just a fair warning for anybody who's listening, we may have just saved you days of discomfort.
You know, if you didn't know why you tuned into this podcast today, maybe this is the reason.
This is
Help
it.
advice. That's exactly.
I also think we should put a warning before in our intro to this podcast. Be like, just so you know, we're going to some dark places. Be prepared.
I mean, it's just real. This is the body, you know.
It's the body.
That's
God
right.
gave us.
That's right. That's we are
like
body soul
deeply
composites.
disturbed.
Yeah,
I'm
this
so
is part of the
deeply
theology of the body. This has something
go.
theologically to tell us about.
That's right.
That's
all right. So good. Great.
Yeah.
And now transitioning smoothly
Oh.
from this topic. It is our last episode
Of the season.
which is of the season. Not ever. Yeah,
Not
we're
yet.
coming back. We're coming back.
Presumably.
Yeah. We have so much more suffering to talk about. So,
That's right. Yeah.
we're not going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, last episode of the season, and we just, usually at this point in the year, we like to look back and think about sort of our highs and lows and the episodes that we got to do and our favorite guests. And so we're just going to be a little reflective with you guys and just share kind of our experience of this season with you. So maybe we'll start with some highs and lows. Maybe we'll start with you. What would you say
Now,
your
are we
high?
talking about highs and lows, like just in general for the year, like
I think in
person?
general, I think it's like a
Yeah.
broad, it can, I mean, because it's all
Yeah.
kind of connected,
Mm,
It's
mhm.
it's
totally
all
is, yes.
connected. So
Yes.
yeah.
So I think I'm going to start with the low and say that for me, low this year was just health-wise, because it was a tough year in terms of I had a lot of infections and that were like just super annoying ones,
Yeah.
where it's like they're clogging you up with your head and whatever. But then also just fibro-wise, like I had a bigger flare this year because there was a lot of stressful things happening and all that kind of stuff. So that was hard. But then I think a highlight for the year is I think there are a couple of things. Like one is I feel like the Lord was doing a lot kind of internally in terms of healing and like with both therapy and spiritual direction and things. Like there were a number of really beautiful things that the Lord did.
Mhm.
And yeah, so that's been really like I just love it when you can kind of look back over a year and be like, okay, this is like you're doing some good things, Lord. And then another high is just in terms of like insurance and just like life security for
Mhm.
things. There have been a
Yeah.
lot of things that have kind of just solidified and evened out and been like put into concrete places where there was a lot of shaky ground before.
Yeah.
So that's been very stabilizing, which is really helpful, both health wise and then also just like freedom wise, because then it just helps, like, when the Lord does something and he sorts out something significant and it just helps your trust, like it
Yeah,
just helps you
totally.
that like
Yeah.
place of trust in you. That's like, are you really a good father? And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, you really are a good father. So like cements
Mm.
that in a little bit more. So I feel like that's been a lot of this year. Yeah. Which is
Nice.
good.
Yeah.
So overall good. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you guys?
Yeah.
Rachel, you go ahead.
Yeah, I can go. It's funny, Erin, because actually I feel for very different reasons and very different circumstances, the same movement, it's with
Yeah.
like my high, I guess it was like, I'm in DC and I'm studying and I'm starting my PhD, and that's been really a beautiful experience for me. And wrapped up in that, all the similar kinds of things that you're saying, and God just sort of providing, in all kinds of ways where I live and things to do with my car, like just so many logistical small things. And God really has been in the details for me in this experience. And so that's been just beautiful to sort of receive from the Lord. Um, and also some other personal things, health things and things like that, that have been very challenging for me, that I have just honestly very recently received some clarity on, and some stability and a place of rest in those questions, which has been so helpful. And yeah, just such a gift. And I just experiencing that, like, oh wow, like these gifts that God has stored up for us, because a lot of my year when it comes to some of that personal stuff was very uncertain. And there was this call, which I think you also experienced, Erin, of just surrendering, amidst the question, just surrendering the uncertainty and kind of choosing to trust, right? Choosing to trust, which we talk about all the time. That's always connected with suffering. And then sort of getting some resolution it's not like a reward for trusting, but it's sort of like a reminder that, I'm not trusting in a magical fairyland. Nothing. I'm trusting in a good father who is taking care of me and has accounted for all of these details of my life. So yeah, I would say very similar arc of low and high. And then I'm just interested to hear, Nicole, from what your experience is, because one of the questions that came up when Erin was talking, as I was reflecting on my stuff, is it has still brought back to me the question of all the areas of my life that remain uncertain, and how it is that I'm approaching that, and what is my orientation to those parts of my life now, having gone through what I've been through this year, which is something I'm pondering and thinking about now. So yeah. What about you, Nicole?
Yeah. Well, I think I'll start with my high. I think my high has been just being married. Because there's just so many times where I wake up and I have a husband. He's there with me. And this
So
is
many
lovely.
times. I love it.
Many times, like every day,
Every day.
I mean, sometimes I wake up and I'm like, oh, I have to go to work, and it doesn't hit me. But like when I have time to like ponder, like, wow, this is a gift. Or just coming home and we just chatting and being able to be with each other through all the little life things. It's like, I'm like, man, this is this is great. More people should do this. Like, this is great,
Oh, that's awesome.
And I think with that, and this kind of relates to what you're saying, Rachel, about like the still areas of uncertainty. It's like, both of us are human, and we both have our areas of that we're growing in. And we have our areas of challenge for sure. And I think it's like to be able to hold those things both at once, of like the gift of being married, and then also, the different desires that both of us have, of ways that we want to grow in our relationship, or things that we would desire just in terms of life steps as a couple, and having to be patient with the time that those things take, and the different ways that both of us approach issues in our marriage, and coming to kind of accept and understand how the other person is approaching it versus how I'm approaching, and so all of that it's like growing pains. And so I think it's trying to find this balance between acceptance and gratitude, and also intentionality, and pursuit of good things and better things and growth, in the areas that are lacking, right? So and I think it's just like an overarching theme for me is like acceptance of exactly where I'm at, exactly where he's at, exactly where we're at, just in all the life things. So and that sometimes can be the gateway to then finding out, okay, so how do I move forward then? How do I move through this?
Right.
Yeah. Oh man. Thank you. That, and I feel like that literally just kind of connects to what the kind of, I guess, question that I was having about what is my posture to the uncertain places in my life now. And part of that posture, and I think it's a big part, I was just talking to some people about that last night. I've been having a lot of conversations about this actually. Part of that posture is acceptance. It's like, I cannot get, God is moving me. I'm always being moved by him, but I cannot get to the next point without being truly at this point,
Yeah. Because that's where he is. He's now in exactly the situation that is in the present. Yeah.
And it's this funny thing where you are at this point, but you're not called to sort of it's not an isolated point. It's a point that incorporates everything that's come before, and that's open to what's in front, what is to come. So it's a way of being planted that's also this, dexterous, like kind of movement.
Yeah. It doesn't mean being complacent. It doesn't mean being hopeless. Right.
That's right.
As in like, you're not accepting, well, this is the way it is, and this is the way it's always going to be. This is the way it is now. And I have hope for the way that it's going to be, and I will continue moving towards that. But my hope in that posture of excitement for the surprise, or excitement for the way that my hopes will be fulfilled, doesn't negate that I still need to accept right now.
Yeah.
And in some ways, the way that it is right now is preparing me. There's something for me here that is readying me for what is to come. So being in the right now is not only not opposed, to what's coming. It's in fact necessary. It's in fact part of what's coming, So.
And it's, there's like, the thing that strikes me about that too, is I'm like, because the even the right now that I am living in is not the perfect me, if that makes sense. Like, it's like the Lord takes all things into account. So like me and all of my imperfections and all of my wounds and all of those kind of things. Because I had this one, like just a couple of weeks ago, actually, I was talking to my spiritual director, because I had this one time where I was praying with Our Lady and Joseph, and like being on the donkey going towards Bethlehem. And it was like Our Lady shared a little bit of the security that she felt, which was really interesting for me, because I felt that a lot this year. And I often feel that like a challenge to knowing how secure I am in the Lord, because everything is shifting and, all of those kind of things. And so she was talking, like we were talking a little bit, and the more we talked, the more I kind of realized that Our Lady was like inviting me to just stay in her womb, like to be there, And the interesting thing is that it's like, because I also find it very hard to rest. Like that's one of the things I find it hard to just like, I don't know, not like just to rest and just to be not, I don't know, thinking about things, or like just to be still, you know, and rest in the Lord. And so it was like, but in there, like it was interesting that came through Our Lady, you know, that experience for me of like being able to just rest. And there was this kind of like comfort and security that I felt in a new way. But the interesting thing for me was that it bypassed all of my wounds and it bypassed all of these doubts. And I'm like, it's like the Lord can do, it just underscored for me that the Lord can do anything, like that he's not limited by the wounds that I have, or like how I am now, or even my ability to receive, like if I that he works with all of that, you know, to be able to like draw me deeper into that security or into that place where he wants me to be.
Right. The Lord's grace is not contingent on our being healed from all of our wounds.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank God.
I know,
That's
eh?
awesome. Yeah. And this is making me think also now of, we wanted to talk about some of our favorite episodes from this past season. And so, you know, maybe we can talk about that now. Mine, the one that's coming to mind, one of my favorites. I had a lot of favorites, actually. There were many really good ones this year. But one of mine was our episode on Truth and Reconciliation, where we talked to Father Cristino. And one of my favorite parts of that episode is just his stuff about his grandmother, his Métis grandmother. And it was, I think her faith, the power of her faith, just, you know, it was so visceral to me. Like when he was talking about her, I remember I was tearing up, and it just was like so powerful to me, because she had been through some very difficult experiences in residential schools. And then when he became a priest, I don't know if you guys remember this part, but she asked her, like, are you going to be okay? And she said, yeah, just be a good priest, you know, be a good priest. And
I've known many good priests and nuns in my day, and you'll be one.
Yeah. And I just thought that's so beautiful that she was able to be open to what God was doing in her family and in her grandson's life, and rejoice in the good, and not be held back by sort of the pain that she had been through. But and he also talked about how she really, like, scripture was really a sword for her. She would really in times of suffering, she really would lean on the promise of scripture, like the promises that God gives us, you know, and that he speaks into our lives. And I don't know, there's something about her faith. And I just felt like, oh, she's totally like praying for us somewhere in heaven. You know, it just felt the presence of this holy woman in our conversation. And and it was just like, we can do this. Like, we can live these moments of suffering in our lives. Well, we can, people have, God helps us to actually do that. And just give me a lot of hope for that. So,
totally. It reminds me actually of one of the episodes that I found really striking was the one where Rita joined us to talk about like joy and hope in marriage despite addiction. And that even like, I feel like a lot of the times it's those witnesses of really heroic virtue in things that are really difficult suffering. That is actually, like, it sounds so cheesy to say it, but it really is. It's very inspiring for those own, like, I found it for my own moments of suffering to remember that it's possible to suffer, like that it's possible to suffer well, like to allow the Lord into everything, to like be with him in that, or those, it's the there's like a solidarity in that, I think. And that was kind of what I felt when she was speaking of, like, the way that she loved her husband, even, you know, with her own, recognizing her own woundedness and all the things that she was bringing into marriage. But there was such a beautiful joy and like grace and like possibility that was there because of God's power and not her own power, you know, which is really profound for me.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
I think the one that I was most affected by, I was, both of the episodes that you guys mentioned came up for me too, or I thought of them, but was the one with oh my gosh, you guys, I'm
John?
so tired. No. Our friends with 14 children who I know, but
Carissa and Patrick.
Carissa and Pat, thank you. And it was a great episode and all of that. And then I got off Zoom and I wept.
Wow.
And it was striking things in me because I am, and I'm in my 30s and just got married, and we don't have kids yet, and we're trying to be prudent and discerning when the right time is to try to have kids and everything. But it's such a big desire in my heart that it's like when I meet people who they have that specific calling to have many children, there's just something in me that it just hits me, and that's just been, I think, part of the theme of acceptance. And it was something that I actually carried in my heart for a while after that episode of just like how do you bring together a good desire and then prudent discernment, with your spouse? How do those things come together when talking about children? Or even just for me thinking about how I didn't start really dating until in my late 20s, and just all of these things that it's like, this is just where I'm at in my life, and I'm finishing a PhD and I have a full-time job, and like, how do I navigating all these things? But I'll just say, like, a follow-up to that, because it was I don't want to say it was wounding, but it opened up an area of something in me that was difficult. But I was this is actually a couple of weeks ago, I was reading an article by Chris Damian. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's a Catholic blogger, and he is himself gay and writes a lot about just issues of being in the church and being a gay person and wanting to be faithful to the church's teachings and all this stuff. He's really thinks thoughtfully about things. But he wrote an article about the movie La La Land, how at the end, the two love interests, I'm going to spoil La La Land for you. So if you haven't seen it and you want to see it, pause, fast forward, skip this part. Okay. I'm giving you a moment. Okay. Nice. And now I'm going to spoil it. So at the end, the love interests, they do not end up together. They, they end up with she ends up with someone else, and he ends up pursuing his career or whatever. They don't end up together. And he made the point that if you looked at that and said, well, this is a bad ending, because romantic love is the highest, he's like, then you're missing something. He's like, because lots of people in the church, maybe who are wanting to live according to the church's teachings and experience same-sex attraction, or just anyone else who has a life path that doesn't fit this sort of specific template of get married, have babies kind of thing, but maybe pursues a career that is beautiful and brings art and brings beauty, or whatever it is that you're called to do. If you're following what God has called you to do, and that means that romantic love was not your highest priority, like that, there's something beautiful and good in that too, intrinsically. That is a way to serve God. And I think that was hearing, it was like, so like Patrick and Chris is that episode and talking with them, and then bookended by reading this and like reflecting of like, I need to accept my own life as somebody who has been called to do a lot of school and to teach and to work, and that there's really beautiful and good things, and that it's not a mistake that I started dating later. It's not because of some sort of flaw in me. It's because I mean, of course I have flaws, but it's that God has actually called me to do these things, and it's beautiful and good. And like, that's actually okay. And so to be able to see Patrick and Chris and their vocation of getting married and having 14 beautiful children and more in heaven, right? And then thinking of my own self right now, being not a ton younger than them and having 0 children, but having this career and all of these things, like that, both of those are good, and I can accept my own life in a sense. So anyway, that's a long-winded answer, but I think just was it. It's amazing how being able to be a part of this podcast and having these conversations kind of spurs on these questions that help me grow. So
so funny, because La La Land, I literally have had that arc of, I started when I first watched, I was like, this sucks, like, it's just sadness. And I'm the kind of person who genuinely, I'm not, even though I'm a grad student, and typically grad students like to watch, like, like
Artsy
movies,
fartsy
artsy
something.
movies,
Yeah.
meaningful, blah blah blah. I'm like, let's watch the Avengers. Like, I just want to watch like stupid
My
things.
sisters and I watched Blades of Glory when we were,
Yeah.
it was great. Anyways,
I just
we were
want
visiting.
stupid,
Totally.
fun, happy. I want to be happy when I want to be entertained. Like, I don't know. That's what I enjoy when I watch movies. But so I remember watching La La Land because this is just sad. Why did I watch this? This is so annoying. It's so sad. And then I actually watched it again over Christmas because it was just a movie on Prime or something, and I didn't really know what else to watch. And I loved it this time when I watched it. And I don't know. And I think, part of it is because I've been through some serious sort of trials in the last 5 or 6 years of my life. And it was a while ago that I had originally watched it. And now there's just, my life experience is just very different. And I think I'm, grown, hopefully, as a person. And so when I was watching it, I had this experience. I was like, there is something so beautiful about the way in which these two people loved each other. And of course, you could take that in many different ways, and you could take it in a distorted way that they didn't end up together because their priority was not relationship. Their priority was, themselves or self. Like, you could interpret it in those ways. But I think the way that my heart sort of interpreted it this time was it was genuinely free. Like, they really gave themselves to each other in a free way at the end when they were like, I know you were made for this, and I want, and I love you in that I want you to pursue what you were made for. Even though it's not going to end up with us being together. And there's sort of this beauty at the end in the last scene, lots of spoilers of this movie, of when they look at each other. There's like that look in the last scene when they look at each other. I think, to me, I interpreted that look as an acknowledgement. I thank you for loving me so well, in a way that you let me be the person that I was created to be, to do the thing that I was put here to do, which is such a different experience. So yeah, and I think it makes room for the fact that God calls us particularly to a particular life, a particular vocation, a particular path, and that we have to accept. Yeah, I guess this episode is a lot about just accepting who we are and what God is doing in us, which is going to be different from what he is doing in the lives of others, but not separate. We're not isolated, where there's something unifying what we're all, the work that we're all doing, which is a work of love,
Can I nerd out really quickly on the music for that movie? So there's the main theme. It's like da 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 da, right? At the very end of the movie, and it's funny because I remember watching it and being like, yeah, this is a fine movie, it's fine. And then it took me the last 3 notes of the movie. I was like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. Like, because what he does is he goes, so the song is in a minor key, right? And it stays in a minor key, right? And the very last time he plays it in that scene, he, instead of resolving it in the minor key, he changes it into this is so nerdy now, I'm sorry guys, into the relative major. So it's still part of the same key signature, but it resolves in a way that you didn't expect, and in the what would typically be think of like as a happy key, a joyful kind of thing, funny. Right? And so that was my mind. I was like, oh, like it's like it's transformative in a way, right?
That totally makes me want to go watch it again. I'm gonna have to go watch it again. Everybody's listening is gonna want to watch it again. It's true. That's funny, but it is true though. Like especially when we're talking about like mistakes or being faithful to what the Lord calls us to do or whatever, I think we somehow, there's like this part of our heart sometimes that just keeps telling us like we've made a mistake, something is wrong, we haven't done it what the Lord, and and so things are messed up, things are not as they should be because we whatever, which is such a lie from the evil one, because God uses everything, like, because he uses everything, like he writes straight with crooked lines, and that's what he does, like, because he knows us so well, and he uses everything, like he can even, like, that's the whole thing about suffering, is that God can use even like the pits of suffering to bring good from, because he tied it to love when it's in him,
That's right.
so it's like all those things about us, like even the little things. I was thinking about that the other day, like the little things, like we could have one conversation with somebody and we would never know, but it could change the course of their whole life, because the Lord can use even the little things, even our mistakes, even the ways that we wander, like none of it is useless when it's in him,
and that makes me think like, okay, we don't have to be afraid of
Mm-hmm.
admitting that we make mistakes when we do make
Yeah.
mistakes, you know, or when we do fail. I mean, that's why
Mhm.
confession is such a beautiful sacrament, because it's like,
Mm.
you don't have to be afraid. You have to be repentant. That's
Yep.
really important, but you don't have to be afraid of it. Like
Yeah.
God
Yeah.
is precisely telling us, I'm here. I love you. I want you to be able to say these things out loud and come to me with them, because you have no idea how I can transform your life
Yeah.
just in that act of humility and
Yeah.
acceptance, you know, peaceful sort of acceptance of our limits and our
Mm-hmm.
weaknesses and our need, our like deep, deep need for God. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
any last thoughts on suffering?
no, my only
Think
thoughts
about
are about watching La La Land now. That's the only thing I want to do.
I have one last thought,
Yes, please.
and it's gonna just
I
take
wanna
us
know.
to the deep and dark places. Is that
It's
okay?
good. Yep.
Yeah,
Great.
Do it.
let's go.
Okay. Yeah. I think, and it sort of follows from this theme of acceptance, I think.
Mm.
And I want to be careful with this because but so you guys can correct all my heresies. Okay, great.
Okay, good.
So when this school shooting happened on Monday, it brought up a lot of stuff, for sure. And some of it is just practical things like, it's jarring and it's sad and it's close and all of these things. And also for me as a Canadian living in the US, I've never experienced or been close to anything like this before. Most of my students had been through something like this before, which is also sad.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I'm like processing this for the first time. And there's this initial thing of like, oh man, I get me back to Canada,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. But it's this realization that, the rift of evil, of death, it goes everywhere, right? It's in every culture, it's in every people, it's in every person, because of sin, because of our fallen world. And so we cannot escape that. It looks different in every place. And I think part of my own self and how I had to process was, so we heard this news right at the end of class. I came back to my office. I was, called Nathan. We were chatting, and then got off the phone, and I'm like, okay, I just kind of want to get back to work. I just want to pretend everything is normal.
Yeah.
But I was like, but everything doesn't feel normal inside. And that would be me kind of trying to press down this anguish and sadness and horror over what's happened. And I knew that, so Belmont, the school where I work, they had opened up the chapel and just said, Pete, if you want to come in and just pray, come.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'm just gonna go and do that. And I, in a sense, what I felt called to do was to open myself up to the vulnerability of receiving this pain, rather than trying to push it away.
Yeah.
And so again, this acceptance of, and so I went, and as soon as I walked in there, it was just, I just cried, and just allowed me, just allowing myself to feel all of the things. And I used up a ton of Kleenexes. I had to gather them all up after, and then find a place to throw them out. It was super gross because I also had a cold, so it's worse. Anyway, so I was all the kind ministry staff were probably like, okay, whatever, she has 12 Kleenexes or whatever. Anyway, but yeah, it's just this thing of how do we have this posture of acceptance, but also transformative action and attitude in suffering? How do we allow ourselves to acknowledge and feel the woundedness that is present in order that we may be healed? Right? If I have a cut on my hand and I ignore it and keep doing stuff rather than saying, oh yeah, this hurts, okay, now I can do something about it, or whatever it is, right? But that acceptance. So I think I'm rambling a little bit. I'm probably still processing all of this.
But it's
the last thing I was thinking of is I had this image of this chasm you know, and this like rift, like, you know, if an earthquake rents the earth apart, and like that is this like this, the death and the bad, that sin and the evil in the world, you know. And in a sense, we have to allow ourselves to see that and feel that internally, that like that wound that is part of everything, because then Christ, that is where Christ enters. He enters into the chasm. He goes right to the bottom, and he's in it with us, right? And if I don't allow myself to feel and acknowledge the woundedness, how can I invite Christ into that space? You know?
And I feel like it's him inviting us, right? It's like, because I don't think we can, that it's too much of a stretch to say that there's a great deal of sin in the world, especially because there's a loss of the sense of sin. Like there's right, like just a lack of a sense of that, or a belief in that, for sure. Yeah. And so then in like, because Christ doesn't hold off any part of his life from us, you know, that it's like, this is one of the reasons why we even started this podcast. When we were talking about it, is because there really is a sense that the Lord is inviting the church in a particular way right now to suffer with him. Like there's been so much suffering that has been part of the lives of so many Catholics that I know, like in a way that does seem like it's deepened in a way, or like it's really present in a way. But that because Christ is there in that chasm, it's like being with him, exactly like you say, Nicole. It involves, it's like he's inviting us to feel this pain of his heart, like to take all of that stuff, you know. And it's like the pain that we feel is the pain of his heart, and there's something that's beautiful about it, but also something that's totally terrifying and totally uncomfortable and totally like it's just painful, you know. Like sometimes I think we look at the cross and we expect the cross not to be painful. Like we expect being with Jesus in his sufferings to not be an experience of suffering, right? Which is like, and totally, like I feel that all the time, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's okay that
suffering
I'm like
is actually suffering.
That's right.
Hurts.
That it actually hurts.
The image that keeps coming to my mind, and we've talked about it in multiple episodes, and it just keeps coming back to me in my life, I think, is when I went to the Holy Land, being in the place that Jesus was supposed to have been held. Tradition says he was held between the scourging and the crucifixion, and it's a hole in the ground, you know, it's a hole deep in the ground. And it is literally like it feels like that, like what you're saying, like a chasm, you know, but it's this deep, dark, damp hole in the ground. And I've shared before on the podcast that, you know, we were praying there, and the priest was saying, this is an image in Polish. You say it in Polish and it's being translated, but it's, again, so powerful. He was saying, like, this is where, like, all of the darkest places of your heart, like Jesus is there. He is there. He came so he could redeem all of those parts. There is not a single place, no matter how deep or dark or dirty or damp or gross, there's not a place in your heart that he is not able to reach, and that he is not already, in some ways, like you said, Aaron, waiting for you. He's waiting for you to meet him there so he can heal that and bring you out, you know, and bring real resurrection. Because that's the other thing. I mean, why do we have this podcast? Because suffering doesn't have the last say. Like death doesn't have the last say. You know, Christ rose and he is risen. And so, but we have to know, like you said, Nicole, we have to know both of those things so that we are not afraid to go and meet him in that place. And trust that he's going to bring us out. And it's, you know, I've talked about this, I think, before as well, but a friend of mine and we sort of went on this healing journey together a while ago, and we encountered this experience of healing is not a map that you can read. It's not a road that, you know, it's not a destination you've ever been to. So you're really trusting the Lord to guide you, you know. So, and I mean healing in the broad sense here, healing from sin, healing from, you know, our brokenness and our own rejection of God in a certain sense, all of the ways in which he's healing all of those things. There's a work of cooperation involved, but it's not the kind of cooperation of like two collaborators who both know where they're going. And we're going to do this together. No, it's like, I'm totally blind. And my work of cooperation is just, Lord, you know, because what am I only know this experience of sin. I only know this experience of brokenness.
You only know where you've been.
I only know where I've been. I don't know what it means to be resurrected. I've never been resurrected, in this area of my life.
Our work of collaboration is fiat. It's like,
that's right.
Yes.
It is truly surrender. It's a work. It's surrender. And then it's the question of like, Lord, I trust you. I believe that you are good because I don't have the path. So I'm just trusting that as you're guiding me, it's good that you're guiding me towards its transformation, its resurrection. I have to believe that. And I do. Why do I believe that? And we talked about this already in this episode, because we know we've encountered him. It's the encounter, I think, that helps us to believe that, because we've already experienced it a little bit. So it's like, it's simultaneously a place I've never been and also a place that from which I came, which it has to be. God doesn't ask me to trust him based on nothing. He asked me to trust him based on him.
Yeah. Man, I feel like I want to just put a soapbox underneath your feet, put you on a corner somewhere with a microphone,
some dreadlocks or some like,
this episode turned from like, just wrapping up the year to like generalized reflections on the nature of suffering and humanity and Jesus. So
it was here. The scripture here, we wrap it up with a nice scripture: where sin abounds, there grace abounds all the more.
There you go. Amen.
That's a good wrap up scripture.
That's good.
Amen. So I guess, thank you guys for listening to this episode and and just thank you for being with us on this journey. Everybody who has listened this season, people who've been listening since season 1. Thank you for your prayers. And know that we definitely pray for all of you. We're so grateful to be in this conversation together. Listen, I don't know.
Could I, instead of a God wink, because we were going to do a God wink, but could we do this instead? Maybe we could each share something, like an episode maybe for next year, that we would be excited about.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Having like a topic. That would be fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I go last.
Okay. Okay. I can go first since I brought it up. So one episode that I would love to have that we talked about this year and hopefully we'll be able to do next year is scrupulosity. I would love to hear from somebody's experience of like scrupulosity and what that's been like and how they found the Lord in that and how they found healing in that. I think that would be super interesting and a real blessing for people. And for me too, like I would just love to hear about that experience. So that's kind of I'd love to. We'll pray that. Pray for that, Lord. Yeah. Okay, how about you, Nicole? What would you like to talk about?
Yeah, I think it would be wonderful to have somebody on the podcast who is Catholic and experiences same-sex attraction or part of the LGBT community, and just hear about their experience and how can we be Catholic and love other Catholics who
experience this,
this stuff.
Totally.
So, that would be cool.
That'd be awesome.
I actually have, and it's funny because I cannot think of her name right now, which maybe it's a good thing, but there's this person that I heard on a podcast years and years ago who was a kind of this powerhouse Catholic woman. I think she worked with Focus and stuff like that. And she got married in her 40s or something like that. And she always had felt called to marriage. And it just kind of was one of those things where I was like, I, as a single woman in my 30s, it just would be really nice to hear someone's experience who married later and how they navigated that time and just the suffering of that experience. I think
I might know who you're talking about. I think Nathan, my husband, has mentioned somebody with a very similar story. So maybe we can make this happen.
Yeah, I would love that.
That's good. And we'd love to hear people's ideas too. If there's like something, if there's some particular deep, dark place of the human heart that you would like to head to, or if you have an
we would love to head there with
you. Have your story. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. If you have something like that, we would love to hear it. So feel free to always send us a message or send us a DM on Instagram or Facebook or email inthethicketpodcast.com. That's where you can see all of our stuff.
Oh no, sorry, that's our website. Never mind.
Oh yes, yes. inthethicketpodcast.com. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, should just give us a rating, you guys, if you would mind.
Yeah, on Apple, it's
helpful. Really appreciate that. I think they kind of expire, I think, after a couple of years. So we had some ratings and then they went away now, or like
do comments. They really?
Well, the comments do, yeah, because any comments that from our first couple of years are gone now. It's only ones within maybe the past year, I think. I've been noticing.
Interesting.
So-
Yeah, we never normally ask for that. Actually, that's true. But this is our final episode, and it
Yeah.
does help us. And
we have 19
you know.
right now, which is usually that's one of the things. Even like the super duper podcasters have like 1 million episodes or 1 million listens of things, still only have like maybe a couple hundred ratings on them. So
well, and
we're
you know, if you're listening to
We
this
are
podcast,
grateful.
you're part of a very special niche group of people
Yep,
who listen. 'cause
exactly.
We're not, we're not one of the big ones, and so you can help us grow. You can be part of this something. There we go.
So that
I'm gonna
more
sound like it's
people
like
can-
what is it? What are those like multi-level marketing things or something?
Yeah,
oh
pyramid
yeah,
scheme.
if
Oh,
you
gosh.
get 10 listeners, we will send you a lock of Jesus hair.
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh.
Just joking.
No, I mean, we are really grateful. And it's not even, I think our hope,
Yeah.
this is really our hope for this podcast is really that the people who need it would hear it. And so
Yeah.
Yep.
that's really our hope.
Yep.
So, and that said, if you know somebody that a particular episode would be helpful to, or, just,
Yeah.
would benefit maybe from listening, definitely.
Yeah.
Share with them,
Yeah.
because that's kind of our prayer. So
That's our prayer. And we don't make a cent off of any of
this
these
is the-
podcasts. It's all just
this is what we do for
That's right.
fun.
Yeah, literally.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
Talk about suffering. But yeah, thank you everybody so
Yeah,
much
thanks
for
for
being
this
with us.
season.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were praying for you. God bless you. And I guess it's the Easter season right now. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're just basking in the beautiful graces of
The resurrection.
the resurrection.
Amen. And we'll see you all in the fall.
Yeah, we will. God bless you.
God bless you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough, and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless, and see you next week.